The Cleveland Browns are no strangers to an off-season storyline or two, and this off-season has been the same as any other in that regard. And when we are looking at our Browns players from a redraft point of view for our fantasy football teams in 2025, I think, Ed, it's only logical to start looking at the quarterback landscape. Is that the best way to sum that situation up?
It's a beautifully kind phrase to describe what's happening Cleveland-wise from a quarterback perspective. I'd maybe go a bit more down the car crash route, but maybe, again, that's being a bit unfair. I mean, before we even talk about anyone, I mean, am I safe to say that none of them will be fantasy relevant in 2025?
Yeah, I think that's well, they will have fantasy relevant games. I think there's probably 2 or 3 players could have value at any given point. But if we're saying fantasy relevant point of view that we want to draft them, absolutely not from my point of view.
Agreed. But I think there's only one place to start, and that is with the man who made all the headlines in the offseason, maybe for the wrong reasons, and that's Shedeur Sanders. So if you look at the ADP, he is probably favourite to be the starting quarterback for the Browns, but I don't think we really know what's going to happen until we actually, training camp and the stories come out of that and whoever settles well in training camp. If you look at the ADP, it's a battle between him and Flacco, who we'll talk about in a moment. I mean, there's going to be a lot of talk about Sanders. And I mean, as you can see, rightly so, he put up some brilliant numbers in his final college season. Is he going to react well to being drafted in the 5th round? I think it's potentially going to go one of 2 ways, isn't it? Either he knuckles down and thinks, well, I'm going to prove everyone wrong and, I am going to be an elite quarterback, or he has a bit of sulk and never really fulfills his potential. Would you agree?
I think we've seen with quarterbacks, especially over the last few years, attitude is an attribute that you need to see in just an NFL relevant player, I think, really, isn't it? We've seen so many examples where the attitude's not been right and then the quarterback hasn't made the cut. I do think there's a world where we maybe don't see him having any meaningful input and play over the course of this year as well, because there's plenty of options to not need to take the gamble on him, isn't there?
Indeed. I mean, I think the best you can expect from him is maybe a plug and play later in the season if you're struggling injury-wise. I do expect us to be talking about him on the wire at some point later in the season. As I say, I think what's probably might happen is that Flacco maybe starts the season, but I don't know. But once you get past Sanders, we move into, a few other quarterbacks. One we've already mentioned who, I don't know. It says quandary on the screen, but I don't, that suggests they've got a difficult situation or a difficult decision to make. Watson, ADP of QB 133. He's done, isn't he? He's done, isn't he?
I don't really understand what before we started recording. I was having a quick Google to figure out what's going on. The more I read, the more confused I got. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him, and it's ridiculous that a player of that talent only a few years ago is completely out of the picture, isn't he, for what we're going to want from fantasy and what the Browns want from their franchise QB.
I mean, I'm sure the Browns fans don't want reminding about how much they paid for him and they gave up for him, but he's still quite a funny Browns fan. Sorry.
Yeah, it's funny.
but yeah, I mean, from a fan's perspective, I think he's pretty much dead. As I said about Flacco, I don't think we need to say much more. You know what you get with Flacco. If you're not really going to have him, even if he starts in September, you're not going to have him on your fantasy roster unless you're desperate. And the same for Kenny Pickett, really. His ADP is worse than Watson's. His ADP of QB 155. So currently there are 154 quarterbacks people are picking ahead of Kenny Pickett. So I think that's pretty good for Kenny. He should be happy with that. But yeah, I mean, those 3, certainly Watson and Pickett are also Rams. Flacco might potentially have a bit of relevance at some point. And that just leaves 1 quarterback left in our 5 quarterback discussion. And I mean, he went ahead of Sanders in the draft, of course, Dillon Gabriel. He wasn't somebody who we were particularly enamoured with when we looked at in the position. And I think we were in the majority from that perspective. But he's clearly got the ability, joint passing touchdown leader in the NCAA. So you've put up there, who knows?
Yeah.
Sanders might, Flacco might be Flacco. Sanders might come in and have a disaster, or he might, sulk his way through training camp. Gabriel might rise to the top, and who knows? He might end up being a first choice. But fantasy relevant, no. But he could have some sort of impact this season.
Would you like my first hot take of the redraft season, Ed?
Oh, I love a hot take. Is it smoking hot or just kind of lukewarm?
I don't know. I think kind of, I don't know, simmering, we shall say.
Simmering. Go for it.
Kenny Pickett finishes the season as the highest fantasy scoring player for the Browns.
Fantasy scoring player or quarterback?
Oh, quarterback, sorry. Yeah, not player.
That would be an amazing hot take, player. I mean, who knows? Who knows?
How ridiculous is that that's not actually that hot a take? Is
No,
what I think. That shows how messy this is.
It really is. And what a mess that situation is. If you're going anywhere near Browns quarterbacks at the moment, you probably need to have a long, hard look at yourself.
Or you're in one of the deepest fantasy leagues going currently. Which position would you like to turn your head to next for Fantasy Redraft 2025?
Yeah, well, an area that, if the quarterback is an area of doom for the Browns, and I think running back is somewhere that's a bit more exciting, not more so than their rookie Quinshon Judkins. And they've got a couple of rookies. We'll come on to that in a minute. Their second round pick. He's currently going as RB25 in redraft league. So he's high up there, late round 6 sort of pick. And we start to get into exciting territory. I think most people expect him to be RB1 in Cleveland. And that's why he's going as RB25 overall. He scored 45 touchdowns in 42 college games. So he'll get a lot of goal line work. And there is a world where RB25 undervalues him, and he has a huge breakout season. I mean, again, is this a hot take? I think, I'm going to pose the question, could he be a top 10 running back? I mean, maybe that's pushing it a little bit, but I think he'll get the workload. And he is someone that I'm looking to pick up where I can. I know you're a Judkins fan as well, aren't you? Maybe not top 10, but you're certainly a Judkins fan.
I think that although he's not my favourite running back, is anyone who's listened to any of our shows before know that I've got a bit of a man crush on Travion Henderson at this point, and Amari Hampton I absolutely love as well. Genti, I think we're happy is the clearest route to being the best rookie running back this year. That is as cold as take can be. It's Judkins' goal line work. The fact he's in with the position of being the RB1 on his team without too much competition. I think his touchdowns alone, we said this during the preseason, just that work inside the 5, that jackhammer sort of player he is, really should throw him into proper fancy relevance. So I've got him put down as RB24 is where I see him finishing the season, going as RB20. That's about right, isn't it? But I see a world where that pays off as being a really good value pick, maybe.
Yes, of course. And there's no Nick Chubb now, but there are a couple of big competitors there. I mean, somebody who we've spoke about for a long time is Jerome Ford. Now, I think you, amongst many others, have been waiting for him to break out. It's going to be a Jerome Ford season. He's going to make that breakthrough. But he's flattered to deceive, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing, he will probably be the primary pass catching back. So I think from a fantasy perspective, he's always going to have the potential to pick you up points. He was RB33 last year, and he was RB16 in 2023. I was shocked to see how high he was in the year before. So, the stats on the screen, 9.6 points per game, 4 top 24 finishes. He'll get you points. I suppose the problem is when. You just don't know when he's going to get you those points. And
Yeah.
he is a weekly flex option, but you're exactly right that he'll just have a bust. And I don't know what to say about Jerome Ford.
No, I'm out this year. I think that he could be a weekly flex option. He could be irrelevant. I think he's going to have his fantasy relevant games. He's a player that are probably more likely to be interested in for DFS. I can't imagine I'm going to be actively targeting in redrafts. He will be a player if he falls to a point where you go, yeah, go on then. But he's certainly not someone I'm targeting. After I have done kind of 3 years on the trot, I think I've had my fingers burned. That's why I'm going for that potential bust pick for him here.
Well, Jerome, there you go. Mark has fallen out with you. He's not happy with you. I'm sure he'll be absolutely
sure he cares loads.
The final running back to talk about is another rookie, and that's Dillon Sampson. I mean, I suppose the thing with Dillon Sampson is that obviously you can see he was drafted after Judkins. He's similar to Judkins. And I think, he probably will be behind Judkins in the pecking order, and he's probably realistically RB3. And I don't think he'll get the workload to justify picking him up in your drafts. But if injuries happen, if loss in form, if Ford drops off more, if Judkins doesn't quite achieve what people expect him to achieve, then watch that waiver wire, because I think he's proved with big numbers during his final college season. He's got the talent, but maybe not someone to pick up in drafts early on. Just keep your eye on him as the season gets going.
And for those of you watching us on YouTube, please do head yourselves over to the subscribe button, click on our channel page, do the old subscribe, like and share. We'd love all the followers we can get on here, and then also check out some of our other content. But Ed, we move from running backs and we're back into some murky fancy depths. Get my words out. Depths, despite some potentially flattering numbers, I think, last season for our next player for discussion.
Indeed, yeah. So we move into wide receiver, which has never really been an area of strength for Browns over the last few years. But we'll start off with Jerry Jeudy. Start off with him because there aren't many. Now, I can't quite believe that he was wide receiver 12 last year. When I was doing my research, I knew he'd had a decent season, but the fact that he was knocking on the door of the top 10 surprised me. And I think it's a bit harsh on Jeudy after a great last season that he's being, his ADP this year is wide receiver 35. Now, I think we can put that down to the uncertain quarterback situation. That's clearly having an impact on his fantasy value. But I think last season was a breakout fantasy season for Jeudy. And he was hardly blessed with a consistent quarterback scenario last season in Cleveland. So who's to say he won't replicate a similar season this year? Or are you saying that wide receiver 12 would flattered him was a bit of a flash in the pan?
I think he was wide receiver 12 based purely on the fact he played 17 games when there were a lot of wide receivers injured last year. I think 14.2 points per game. They're not wide receiver 12 numbers on the season, are they? But he was there every game. And if you had him, you at least had a player you could play every single week. No, yeah. I do think he'll fall well out of that this year. The uncertainty, he had that last year. You're exactly right. But 14.2 points per game, you can't argue that that's not something you'd be quite happy with a flex option. That's where he's going. So probably fair value with a little bit of upside. Is that the nicest way to put it?
Yeah, I'm probably slightly higher on him than you are. I think like last season, he had 12 weeks where he scored over 10 fantasy points. So he was consistent in that regard. He rarely let you down. And he had 9 wide receiver 1 weeks. So that's positive. I think he's been slightly undervalued. And, I think there's a good chance he ends up being maybe a top 20, 25 receiver. I certainly don't think he's entering top 10 territory. But a bit of a sleeper pick, just because he's not really got much competition. There aren't many other people who are being thrown the ball. So just by kind of law of averages, he ends up with some points. His other competition really at wide receiver, his only competition is Cedric Tillman. I think he's somebody who I would keep an eye on. Now, he really looked to be finding his groove halfway through last season. Just when they traded Amari Cooper away, Tillman got more game time and he really picked up. But he then spent the rest of the season in concussion protocol. So that really hampered his progress. I think he's worth a bench stash. And you agree based on the graphic on screen, because maybe just a sneaky pickup late in drafts, because again, when you look at Cleveland and the options they've got, you've got Jeudy and you've got him, and that's about it. So, Tillman is someone I would keep an eye on.
Let's move across to tight end, and we're kind of going back to where I'm interested again from a fantasy point of view with our next player.
Yeah, I mean, David Njoku. He's been around for a long time now. Last year, tight end 11, year before, tight end 6. He's going off the board about tight end 9, tight end 10. So, where you'd project him to be. Just a reliable tight end option who's performed well, despite, the whole time he's been in Cleveland, he's never really had a decent quarterback situation. He's always produced numbers. He's probably starting the season as the number 2 option in the passing game behind Jeudy. So likely he's going to get targets. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him sitting comfortably again in the top 10 tight ends. Things with Njoku, I'm just always that little bit unsure. He has those kind of nagging injuries. And he's entering his 9th season in the NFL, Njoku. So becoming a bit of an old timer, I would say. So, he will do you a job, Njoku, in a tight end landscape that's been a bit up and down over the last few years. I think Njoku is probably fairly reliable.
And it's going in that sort of band that I'm quite happy to wait to pick up a tight end as well this season. So he's a player that is certainly been my reckoning when it comes to getting my tight end in redraft leagues this year.
He's always ends up in someone I get a lot of shares in Njoku.
He's got a little bit of competition, a player that I'm very interested to see how they settle into their role at the Browns, and someone who I don't know, could be fantasy relevant, could also be completely irrelevant. We don't talk about much more again.
No, I looked at tight ends when we were, pre-draft, and Harold Fannin was someone that interested me. He was in my top 5. He's around 3 picks, and they've invested a bit of draft capital in him. He's going to give Njoku some competition. He posted some insane numbers, as you can see, in his final college season. A bit of a health warning there. That was with Bowling Green, who are hardly one of your elite college teams. 117 catches for 1,555 yards and 10 touchdowns in 13 games. He's slightly on the small side for a tight end at 6'3", but he's got excellent hands. He looks like a receiver when you see him playing. Definite long-term upside, but fancy relevance. Watch the waiver wire. Njoku might get injured. Fannin might break out. Who knows? But maybe worth a stash. But in terms of redraft this season, he could, as you say, be completely irrelevant.
So the Browns then, lots of players to talk about, but not necessarily lots of players we're targeting, I think is probably how we can sum the show up in a nutshell.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, and, of course we are Ravens and Bengals fans, so you might suggest we are hardly objective when it comes to the Browns, but I think we've been fairly fair.
So that is the end of our deep dive into the Cleveland Browns. Why not go and check out either the rest of the AFC North now with the Ravens, the Bengals, or the Steelers, or hang on for the rest of the shows on each of the other 32 NFL teams throughout the remainder of the offseason. But for now, good luck with your redraft drafts. And from Ed, from I, and from Malcolm, it is goodbye.
You have been listening to Pestle and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.